All right. So we're back into, did you take a roll call? Yeah.
So it's 8:09 p.m. We are back in open session. I'll call the roll. Trustee Johnson?
Here.
Trustee Brennan?
Here.
Trustee Vasquez?
Here.
Trustee Gillis?
Here.
Trustee Bachner?
Here.
Trustee O'Connell?
Here.
President Ducey?
Here. All right. Thank you, Village Board members. This is our your, but we're here as your staff to help you through this process. This is your strategic planning and goal setting workshop. Just for the public's benefit and for the record, I'll just go over some of the background information that I sent out to the Village Board of Trustees. So there's some context here. So strategic issues or goals are critical items that are truly important from the vast amount of circumstances and information at both the policy and operational levels that currently are or may confront the village government. Identifying strategic issues can be compared to pouring gallons and gallons of ideas into a bucket with a filter at the bottom. After much thought and discussion, what emerges is a mix of important issues that demand attention. The village's goals revolve around three guiding principles that have been adopted by the Village Board. Ensure that the village provides a safe community for its residents, business owners, and institutional partners. Work to protect and strengthen the value of property. Implement strategies to stabilize property taxes. Strategic issues usually center around attention or conflict on an issue that must be resolved because of differences over past ways of doing things versus future demands. Strategic issues tend to have no obvious one best solution. They also represent a fundamental choice that must eventually be made at the highest levels of the organization at either the policy, meaning elected, or administrative level. We typically strive to meet different central themes as we focus on our strategic goals regarding customer service, performance, economic development, and quality of life. As you go through your annual budget, you will see in the budget that was adopted last year that there are Village Board adopted goals at the front of the budget document. Each department goes through its operating budget and aligns what we plan to do for the next fiscal year in the objectives and overview pages in each operating budget. So we tie our departmental goals, in addition to the day-to-day things that we do to support the operations of the village, we tie our goals to your goals. What the budget becomes is a document putting our money where our mouth is, essentially, operationalizing the Village Board's goals and the village staff's goals, and putting those policy decisions that you all make as our elected officials into practice. So to do that, one of the things we do from time to time is a strategic visioning and goal setting workshop. Typically, this coincides with the elected of new officials because what you will find, and for those of you who've been on the board for a few years already or for a long time, many of these goals take time. There are short-range goals and long-range goals, and so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. But as you know, these things take time. And so we sit down with boards every couple of years and get an idea. We talk a little bit in the budget, as you saw, where we're at and where we're going. So the purpose of tonight is to do that and to get some ideas from you all. This is a brainstorming session. There are no bad ideas. What I think we're going to find is there are a lot of ideas that tie together, that tie back to central themes that are maybe even a little bit repetitive. That's okay. What we do following this meeting is take those ideas and boil them down and bring them back to you as a Village Board of Trustees to approve and incorporate into the annual budget. So this is not the final discussion on this matter, but the first discussion. So with that, we'll start with visioning. Imagine that you left the village of River Forest tomorrow and didn't return until many years in the future. The Village Board members have been asked to develop 3 or 4 vision statements that would describe what you think you would see in the community in terms of village services, policies, facilities, staffing, and programs 10 or 15 years into the future. There are no wrong answers. Use your imagination. And if anybody would like to share those visioning items, I would be happy to take them, and we'll put them up on our paper here. And as we fill these sheets up, we'll put them around the room so everybody can see what we're working on. And so Lisa, before we move directly into that, I
Yeah.
just want to add part of the guiding principles, the
it was that, you know, you're strengthening property values, but it's strengthening property values through quality of life initiatives. He's strengthening our quality of life. I mean, one of the reasons we live here in River Forest is because, you know, we have a high feeling, hopefully.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thank you, President.
Part of it.
All right.
Visioning. What do you think, 10, 12 years? Yeah, please.
Yeah. I'd like to see more affordable housing options in River Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we have more than 25% of our residents are single family or individuals living in homes or apartments. And what we've seen around the board table a lot are zoning variance requests, building onto, up and around their homes. Our homes are getting bigger and bigger and more expensive. And it's harder and harder for people to move into River Forest and to be able to stay in River Forest once their families, you know, like me, become an empty nester, my kids move away, and also to support our seniors. So what does that look like? Well, it could look like making, returning a lot of our large homes to duplexes, which a lot of them used to be. It could be ADUs, resolution, but also creating more affordable housing for our seniors and for residents who want to move here and who want to be able to stay here.
I'll start with one for myself. I would love to be able to see 10, sooner than this, but see the decisions of the board and the village against a matrix that includes equity for everyone in the village and those who are a part of our community day in, day out, who may not be residents. And using some sort of tool that we can, or at least the thought.
For me, if I'm coming back.
Excuse me, Rez. Could I ask you guys a favor? Could you please speak into the microphones because you break up and at the end of your statement, can't hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. For myself, I would like to see the corridor of the TIF areas, North Avenue and Madison, be completed with commercial and a mixture of condos or apartments right above it. So we have both housing and probably some affordable housing and as well as some housing for seniors. But the commercial is also developed as part of that. I've seen it in some suburbs where they do that. It's a combination of commercial businesses on the first floor and then housing or residence right above it, so that the customers are there, but also the businesses are there as well. So, yes.
Along with that, taking advantage of our region versus just the River Forest itself, and understanding who would come from commercial and retail, and having an understanding that we Park, Maywood, Elmwood Park, Oak Park area, and using that to come up with some of those answers. Regional
Collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I will try to go next. Like looking into the future, I think some of the things we have to do, and again, I do think it's going to require increased collaboration with the Mayor's Metropolitan Caucus, with western, suburbs, starting with Oak Park, River Forest, Forest Park, Elmwood Park, Maywood, Broadview, et cetera, is I'll just put these programs on the table. One is subsidies or some sort of program that helps homeowners with the electrification of their homes to move away from natural gas. That's a thing in our future that we need to get ahead of. How do we do that? Secondly, some sort of program that educates and enhances and perhaps figures out a way to make more cost-effective pavers and other permeable surfaces for our residents, so they're not going to, concrete and asphalt, which is cheaper, but not necessarily the best option. I would love to bring back, and I think Sarah, you might have heard this before from me, bring back the tree buying program, where we can buy trees through the village and then work to get those trees put in place, because we need to keep working on our tree canopy. We have an amazing arborist. We have an amazing program focused on maintaining our trees. That program, I personally put a lot of trees in my backyard through that program. I don't know what happened to it. I would love to know why it went away and bring it back. I do think, and it's not on this list someplace, but if I actually did an exercise looking to like what I'd want if I left and came back, and where I'd be like, this is still that magical place where we all lived, is continued variety in housing and architecture. And the way to do that, I think, is really that we're going to have to start looking at historical preservation at some level. Also look at increased variety in housing stock, the type, the price points, et cetera. I think everything else has been covered that was on my list. Thank you.
If I want to add to something that Lisa said, should I do it now while you're at that, or? Are you thinking of tactics?
To give you the vision first.
Well, I think we can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but just to try to pull it out so we have it in the audio, I think what you're looking at is a diverse and robust urban forest within the village.
Yes.
Residents have access to resources to help support that.
Yes.
And program incenting
is perfectly good.
Same difference, whatever. Either way, encouraging residents to utilize stormwater management techniques within their own properties.
Yes.
Right. And then subsidies for residents to convert to natural gas.
For electrification to move away from natural gas.
Yeah.
Thank you. Electrifying your house, they're actually doing that now in Colorado and other states, California. Because unfortunately, there is not a green there's not a green energy for natural gas yet. There's just green energy for electricity. So actually going to electricity is going to help us long term.
Okay.
A lot of.
So the vision is that there's some sort of village program. The vision is that residents are utilizing more energy sources than just natural gas, and the village has done something to support that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking my ideas and making them even more aspirational and better.
Work together.
Yeah.
If I ask just
go
a quick question with regard to the.
Bob can hear.
Thank you, Bob. Can you hear me? Hopefully.
Yeah, you got to speak up.
Okay, I'll
We're gonna have
speak
to-
even louder. That's right. I am terrible at this. Yes.
Tell you.
So my what? So, with regard to that, I know that there are some state programs and subsidies with regard to solar panels and the like. Is that something that we as an organization are comfortable with or promoting?
Yes, we are. In fact, we're part of MC. We've actually now
Okay.
by Rex through MC
Okay.
squared, and we're now moving forward with the community.
Great.
I'm going to get it wrong, but CS squared, which is through Mayor's Metropolitan Caucus.
So Lisa, the one I wanted to piggyback on, what Lisa said was the incentivizing permeable pavers. Should I wait for that? Or?
Well, if it's part of a vision, no. If it's a short-term goal or tactic, maybe hold it until we get then. Either way, the bottom line is we're ultimately going to get to short-term, near-term, and longer-term goals. You can introduce them now or later.
Because the vision is helping our residents. You said it better than I would. Helping our residents incorporate storm water management techniques into their own properties.
I'm fine addressing it as a shorter term now that it's on longer term, and we'll just layer it.
So my vision is, call it transparency through education, meaning I think we have great transparency right now, but when I think of what I would like if I was a new resident coming in, it's just the ability to quickly find out about programs. Love an event that would allow me to, like a town event that would allow me to not only find out but meet people. So I'm calling that a town. So part of that is just the education. So I'm calling that like a town event. Additionally, I would say, for me personally, I'm really heavy on the property tax appealing, and I would love like an ongoing community service that we offer that teaches people about how to apply for appeals. Perfect world for me, every resident would apply for an appeal no matter what. So, I'm basically saying through education we offer more, even though we have a strong educational system right now, but we collaborate with the universities and offer more educational events for our residents so that they can just take advantage of all the programs we have. Then the question is, how do they find out about them? And so that's where the transparency part comes in. But I think about a new resident. If you just moved here, how do you find out about things? Yes, you come to the village.
Yep.
And yes, you may get a hold of the newsletter. But I think that we have the ability and resources to be even more forthright in our outreach to new neighbors, as well as about all of our resources and how they can take advantage of them.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I would add, we talked about collaboration among communities. I think we have to increase the collaboration amongst taxing bodies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Collaboration.
Yeah, and that was that was a great one on two different parts. The idea, Kathy, that you said, working with our taxing bodies to make sure. So in this instance that you're talking about, here that the township is there and has some great resources. So how can we make that, other? Yeah. And then the idea of having events in River Forest, I think that is something that has been near to me in ways to those for residents so that they are sticking around on the weekends to do things that are fun, festival kind of things. When you think about the, food truck rally, that's something that everyone enjoys, but doing some more stuff like that across the village that we can others to come to the village.
Yeah, great. Those are great.
Let me just say, as example of a like a town event. So, put my old River Forest Youth Soccer League hat on, but every year there's the Fall Fest, and it brings all the community
Mhm.
parents and kids together, and it's a huge event. They have the jumpies, the everything. And I wondered, why can't we, as a community, have one of these events, and within that event, have stations about older, education and things that we're doing, so that you don't just have to get the information from, the newsletter. You can just be in that park. You can enjoy. You can meet people. You can enjoy the day with your kids, and then you can also learn about the different things that we have going on in the community. So, it may encourage people to come to the festival or fair, and then desire to move to River Forest because of what we offer.
There's so many communities that have lighting of a tree or a lighting of a Hanukkah candles or whatever, and we don't do that. I think those are great ideas. I think we should be. So I would add, coming back 10, 12 years, I would think that I'd like to see, although we can't call ourselves, and I know this sounds like it's old-fashioned, but it should be complimentary of, we all love the charm of River Forest, and, some of us may say we still live in Mayberry, but we don't. We have more than one stop light now. We have several. But I think that comes from the fact that everybody knows everybody can walk freely around town and feel safe. I think that's where that whole Mayberry thing comes from. So I see our town as this still very charming, welcoming, inclusive town that looks at housing for everyone, that transportation is available, readily and available to everyone. Our infrastructure is readily and available to everyone, including those with disabilities. That just everything that we offer as a community, in addition to what we just talked about, the other taxing bodies which bring that charm to River Forest, whether it's the schools or the library or the park district. We all work in concert to bring that beautiful charm. But I think we're the leader of this, kind of collaboration effort. And so I see if we can get the, housing and transportation and infrastructure down right, that and everything works together, I think, why leave River Forest? That would be mine. What would cause you to leave? If you can afford to stay here, if you can have transportation to get to and from work, if you feel safe, I guess safety would be, I put safety in there. And, there's ability to get around town, and there's commerce, grocery stores, just places to shop and visit.
Basically, get everything you can that you need in this socially.
That means we have to work with not only our surrounding communities and our taxing bodies, but both. All intertwined with us. States, they don't. States, like the state owns some of our streets. Government owns the tax. So we like to think that we can do it all, but we can't. I think Lisa touched on it a little bit of historic preservation. Our architecture is beautiful, and it is why but it's keeping what we have, but improving where we need to. And where our weaknesses are. We need to be cognizant of the weaknesses.
I would like to just come back to, because you talk about transportation, infrastructure, health, but health, again, there's health, with the health thing, that's where I think kind of the green ecosystem comes in, being free of air pollution, noise pollution.
lot of what we're talking about here is really interesting, the idea that, like, as we think towards new ideas and where we want River Forest to be or continue to stay, idea that we are open to how we change to so we are not, we can be as a board and village and a community, we can be excited about new things and not just stay with old ideas because that's the way we do. You probably have some wonderful way to say that, but
Don't throw the baby out with the
Exactly.
and be creative.
Yeah, of course.
New ideas. And one of the reasons why I'm thinking about that is because when I think about our economic development, and a few people have mentioned public transportation, you know, what are the barriers to people, you know, who might be in the Oak Park area walking across Lake, right? Like walking across Lake, walking across Harlem, walking across North Avenue to come into our community. You know, walking through the village, you know, from Maywood to River Forest, is some of that public transportation, right? Like Green Line stops at Harlem and Lake. Is there any, you know, opening for that to stop at Lathrop or something like that, so that people could continue on into our economic hub? Are there things that we can do around Harlem Avenue so people feel like it's just a natural progression through walking, you know, through Oak Park?
Bob, are you, hello, Bob?
Yeah, I did raise my hand a while ago, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I good comments. I wanted to go back to Rez's. I'm on the TIFs. I mean, I think it's just strengthening our overall economic development. You know, we have, and because it's mostly independent, we have independent business people that run businesses in our town up and down Lake Street. And I think, you know, whatever we can do to support them with initiatives, you know, at one point in time, we talked about, you know, facade rebates and those kind of things. And I know I'm getting into the tactics in the short term, but I mean, those kind of things to, you know, to make that a more exciting economic driver for us. You know, we have Harlem and Lake that, you know, obviously there's lots of changes going on there on, you know, almost on a monthly basis. So, you know, it's just, again, trying to figure out how we drive this this economic engine, because again, as we talked about previously in previous board meetings, you know, we need some economic development to drive some of the other projects we're doing. So it's really important. But I concur with a lot of the comments that were made. So thanks.
So I think, and I think, I don't know, Lisa, maybe we don't bucket this way, but I think the bucketing is, you know, we talked about what makes a good community. I mean, other than, you know, our parks and schools and our library, which is a wonderful complement to, but what else? You know, why do people come to River Forest? And I think we've touched on categories of transportation, like we talked about. Housing, we talked about that. Housing, as Katie said, it's for seniors, it's for those that want to downsize, it's for many people. Those things are attractive. And then transportation. There are many things in transportation that creates this attractiveness to River Forest. You know, infrastructure, you know, you know, people feel comfortable. I mean, just anything that, you know, makes life better for them, you know, whether it's pavers or ADA compliant streets, street lights that are longer than 2 seconds, so that seniors can walk across, you know, feeling comfortable. I mean, those, I think, you know, again, infrastructure can cover a lot. If we can categorize infrastructure and say what's under those, if we can categorize transportation and what's under that, housing, historic. To me, historic preservation is important in addition to all the other things that were said as well. So I think there's so many great things, and economic development, in my mind, is property taxes. It's what Ken brings up, right? It's the engine that allows us to really stabilize those property taxes, the amount of commercial and residential to augment, our base. So anyway, yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Oh, Bob, you're muted.
Hey, Bob, muted.
I know this is kind of outside of our bailiwick, but I think it's just, maybe it's mentioned and put over to the side. It's just something else that, when you ask the question of when you come back here 10 or 15 years from now, what do you want to see? And I think we, in some form or fashion, we have to address our schools. And so, again, it's kind of outside of our bailiwick, but I think it's got to be part of the bigger conversation. Making sure that people, are coming for the schools and the schools are delivering what they're supposed to deliver.
I would say, Bob, too, making sure that there's enough infrastructure for the schools. I remember a few years back, there was an increase one year of 5% at one of the schools. And we need to make sure that we're prepared for that as a village, and that we're able to provide the support to the schools for essentially those kinds of population needs.
I'll add, when I think about leaving and coming back in 10 to 15 years, I would like to see vibrancy in creating more artwork. The arts quarter that we had discussed last year, we had a resident that was very interested in helping us with that. I don't think it went anywhere. But so I think, one can see River Forest as a place that doesn't change much, and that can be a positive and that can be a negative. Sometimes it can be seen as a little bit sleepy, but we can add some vibrancy with, murals and a coordinated arts quarter project.
This idea of having corridors is a lot of other towns very successful with that. Banners with this is where you do this thing, like a First Theater, in Chicago.
We had, I remember districts, and we had a lot of conversation around that. We'd have we did create historic districts, but like Soho or something, we wanted to create not to create a divide, but just areas of River Forest. I know we came up with some crazy. Remember that? Maybe Eric was more a part of that, creative kind of district. Something that I really like. Feeling.
Just an overall investment in technology. We had many ways. Besides for businesses that are innovative in technology, it could be. But some of the things that make things vibrant nowadays is their use of technology, right?
Yeah, great idea.
More
Smart city,
something is.
smart cities.
Right.
A lot of technology.
And I'm gonna go real tactical, but I think it's a cool thing. It's like internet everywhere. A lot of towns
I
have
was
that.
gonna say, and stabilize that internet capacity throughout the. Yeah.
Okay, we're small enough, Bob. I didn't speak into the microphone.
All right, so the next thing that we'll move on to is the development or short-term or near-term ideas. So the board was asked to develop 3 or 4 short-term goals that you feel the village should be, that should be addressed and be prepared to discuss during the session. Short-term means any goals, objectives, services, or issues that you'd like to see initiated or completed within the next 2 years. These should be plans, programs, et cetera, that can be realistically initiated within the next fiscal year, and to which, in your opinion, the board and staff should commit.
I want to start by making sure we get you business cards that say whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever, Murphy. Yeah, whatever. Oh, yeah.
Wasn't one that I thought about before just now, but I've been at some in-person meetings recently, and there have been people from the or staff from the township, staff from the library, and other places that have these name tags that are usable, magnetic.
Yeah.
And I wished I had a name tag. I could have just, put on and.
Oh my gosh.
Very short term.
The idea that we have things that we can reuse.
Yeah, and actually I talked with someone about it, and they said, well, they have a set of 2. They keep one at their office and one in their car. Easy to forget, right?
Sorry, yes, that's
Don't poke holes in your. So, but the one I had thought about ahead of time and had written down was I would like us to have a waste pickup structure that supports the village's stated climate goals and incentivizes our residents to reduce waste.
Katie, what does that look like?
It looks like something that doesn't cause someone who wants to adhere to the village's stated climate goals by, having to pay more to compost. Because someone who's composting and paying more to do it is reducing their landfill, but they're still paying the same amount for the landfill.
Right.
No, we're not creating that incentive for our residents to reduce their landfill. I've got, you can see someone with a burgeoning landfill bin every week with stuff next to it and everything, and they pay the same amount as someone who maybe doesn't have to have their landfill bin emptied, but once every 2 months. And part of the reason why they don't have to have that landfill bin emptied once every 2 months is that they reduce their waste consciously, and they are paying for our additional fee for the compost and putting a lot of the things that would go in someone else's landfill into the compost.
Mm-hmm.
So I never.
Good decisions. I'm sorry to keep going. And making good decisions, really knowing what the village waste haulers rules are on recycling and really adhering to that, and not wish cycling and throwing stuff in recycling that really is tainting our recycling.
Yeah, so I never understood why the composting was more money. So that's one that always threw me for a loop, is if we want to do something like that, why do you incentivize people? So, but thank you for that. I wanted to jump on something that Ken brought up earlier that I think from a short-term strategy is something that we could do is, I think, we do the village, we conduct inspections when homes are sold for, through the water meter and things. So we have a pretty good idea of when properties are being turned over. And why wouldn't we put together some kind of welcome packet, to Ken's point, on, providing all the information to a new homeowner that they'll need. One of the last things that happens is the water bill read. And so we know that within a day or two of that happening, someone else is going to move into that house and pick up that water billing. So, put that packet together with all that information that Ken was referring to, and let's get it out there, however we want
Bob, didn't we send you one?
Nope.
Yeah, we did. We got your name wrong.
Oh, that's right. It was Bruce.
Okay, so we did send one. It just,
It was
we
a
just
letter.
didn't
It was
call
a
you
letter.
in the right. We just didn't give
It
you
was
the
a
right
letter,
name.
it was a letter, but I think what, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, I think what you were referring to was, a better understanding of all of the services and places to go. So.
I have a short term. I think it's short term. The lighting, the traffic lights, and the timing of the traffic lights, at least from some of the seniors I've heard, is they think it's a little too short, and even from some of our disabled residents, they think they need a little more time than what the timing currently is on some of our traffic lights. So I don't know if we've actually did a study or whether we looked at the timing of the traffic lights when we in the village, and if not, can we? And that's, I'm thinking, is short term to do. Just in general is what I mean.
I have just two things that I'm not quite sure, like the visioning versus short term, or maybe this is intermediate, but I just want to make sure it gets noted somewhere. There's two things that are happening that I think we need to just acknowledge and figure out kind of our point of view and how we're going to support it. One is if the infrastructure funds and how can we, figure out what we're going to get and figure out how we're going to use them to achieve these short, intermediate, and long-term goals. That's the first thing. And secondly, related to that probably is the Eisenhower, and whatever they're going to do with the Eisenhower is going to impact us, and understanding kind of what we want from that to, given all of our goals, I think is going to be key. I'm talking about whatever dollars.
Oh, that 1.2 trillion.
Just that little one, yeah.
Oh, okay, that little one.
I don't know. Maybe we'll get $1 trillion. Who knows? No, I know we're not going to get that much, but just understanding what we're going to do and then applying that against these goals is probably going to be a short-term thing for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes back to collaborating.
Correct.
I have one. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Include me in that as well.
Not throwing grants.
And I was going to say, do we have to limit it to, I know we're talking about infrastructure, right? But there are other programs I know that we've tapped in from, I remember the fire chief, I remember our police chief have tapped into different grants. So I think any other services that we offer or provide, that we should be tapping government funds.
And private funds, grants.
Correct, perfect,
Anything.
yes.
I think also encompassing all that is what we've discussed in the past. If we have staff that can look into all this, or should there be an appointed staff to really dig deep into this and the grants that are out there?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just an overview or an examining what type of staff. Can we accomplish it with our current staff, or is there needed staffing to look into that issue?
That was going to be my next point, is that we have to ensure that we have staffing across the board. You know, make sure our public safety is staffed, and make sure our, you know, all of our employees are happy and staffed.
And I was just going to add, as my one, I guess now, back to education, and I think we should have more village-sponsored adult education classes or training or across the board. We would need to obviously get the word out about it. But if I look at some of our neighbors, they do, in my opinion, a better job of having multitudes of classes and forums and things that help better their residents, and I think we could do the same in River Forest. So, of course, I'm going to say the property taxes. I've seen, you know, classes that help. I've seen some communities have just a quick one-off on, you know, trust in estates, or just learning about different issues that would help you, budget training, you know, anything that would help improve, like adult education, things that would help our neighbors improve themselves and their families.
You know, and in following up with that, Ken, a good idea, but also maybe working with our library, because they already have some classes, not everything that you're mentioning, but I think they already have the system, quote unquote, set up for, and we can, you know, just add or cooperate or work with them in terms of
And
that.
I mean, I know your thorn is property taxes.
Right.
Hardly, in fact, that's why I keep going back to township, and Eric brought it up. I mean, our assessor does a really great job of doing classes. I'm not quite sure she does. We do a great job of advertising the classes, although I think she tries. I know she brings in the Cook County Board of Reviews.
I was going to say, there's a commissioner.
That comes in and actually goes through. I mean, she does that, and so maybe we need to help augment
and get the word out.
The word out.
Right.
Do you feel like we've heard this from our, you know, our residents and neighbors? Is some of the things that we bring up here at the table, they don't have an understanding about what's going on sometimes. One thing that I can maybe like around the tip, and how recall our previous village manager having sessions were in discussion around the TIF and explaining some of those things. And so maybe holding more things like that. And sometimes those are required by law to do so, but maybe thinking beyond what is required and what is needed or wanted. Make sure we're understanding from the residents their needs and their understanding or, you know, the program is over. The other part, and I guess I said this for the first part in terms of visioning, it feels like it's both, but in relation to a equity decision matrix, I do think that is something that and should happen years. in terms of initiating it and following through, and along the lines with that, doing the racial equity impact.
Doesn't that, isn't that an output of the advisory group? I mean, so if we're looking for short term, I mean, I think that's part of that output.
So putting it here kind of codifies it.
Okay.
One other thing, and it's tied to education, but we do have 2 colleges in our town. So I think really trying to figure out how we can better serve the community through those amazing places. I think Dominican, both schools do a lot. I think better understanding what they have to offer, communicating that to residents. Are there other things that, maybe they can do for us, we could do for them?
In addition to that, we also have Trenton Community College. I'm not sure if some of the courses or classes can be coordinated with them, and maybe they're offering something already that's already part included. So away from the 2 universities, but yeah.
Agreed.
I wanted to add something to Ken's comment, and then I have another one. The idea about adult education. When we first created the Sustainability Commission, we held programs at the library put on by the Sustainability Commission on various topics. And, I've already mentioned it, that a lot of people don't really understand what's recyclable in town and what isn't. And a lot of it, we just don't take the time to read the placard that's sent out to us. And it's also difficult to read the thing at the bottom of the bottle, too. I've gotten out a magnifying glass before. That's a good example of another education thing. It could be like, recycling 101. I often thought before Julie Moeller left town, we should have try to stump Julie.
Yeah.
With, how do I recycle this, Julie? And
Yeah.
she can tell you.
Yeah.
And, that was just the Sustainability Commission that did that. A lot of, talking about new residents that come to town, or even existing residents who've been here for 12 or 15 years. Do they know what traffic and safety does? Why not have traffic and safety put on the thing at the library? Say, this is what we do, and this is who we are.
I agree. And I think we do highlight commission.
But it's not the same as a...
Yeah. And I think, but my point is I think if I agree, I mean, we do that. We need to do more of that. And I think that...
I think it's pulling it all together. Like you're saying, there are programs out there. There was a unified calendar where people can say, oh, there's a Triton event tonight that says this. Oh, there's a Dominican, but it pulls everybody together. We don't have to work that hard to pull it off, but, maybe I'm off. So.
Catholic rate, isn't that, are they part of that?
We have a community. We work really hard at...
I know we have a Triton's out in.
Triton's not a part of that?
No.
No, it's
Only
D200,
River Forest and
D200, D90, Park District,
okay.
Library, and Township.
Park is part of that.
D200, correct.
Is border. I mean,
Yeah.
River
Yeah,
Forest is part of it.
I never even noticed.
No, Triton's not. Okay.
Short-term goal to me.
Yeah.
But I did ask at a village meeting, maybe a couple meetings ago, if we could publicize Dominican events. And I think you told me yes, that there is, as long as it's a community.
Yeah, exactly. And lots of those agencies sponsor other events on their calendar.
Right.
Just like, the village calendar does, all the time for different things. Specific of Dominican, but they certainly, welcome to. We try to do things that are either in River Forest or, really for River Forest.
Yeah, well, they just put on the, a theatrical production, Mamma Mia. Weekends, that could have been fun to.
Back to strengthening relationships. I'm assuming that goes both ways, right?
Right.
So, you know, where we really look for our universities
Mhm.
and their taxing bodies.
I have two more. One is restrictions on the highest decibel leaf blowers.
Hmm.
About considering the health and safety of our residents and those who are coming through the village, who are working here as well. The decibels are loud from afar, even when you're inside your house trying to work. So we want to make our village more work at home friendly, but just consider the operator who's operating that machine. If it's a gas blower, it's its highest decibel. That's causing hearing loss. And then the second one was is get a report and recommendation out. If I haven't seen one yet on the community center project. That is a collaboration between all the taxing bodies.
Well,
I think Eric.
I think that.
I never saw that.
Yeah.
That
I think Eric thought that's what he.
Kathy, could you repeat what you just said? I didn't hear it.
I just said I believe what Eric reported out when he left, which I didn't like or agree with, is, and there's no secret in the township, this is that that they opted out of doing anything, of creating a new community center or investing into a new community center collectively.
Yeah, and they got the park board to go along with it also. Yes.
Oh yeah, by the way, you were on it. You were the liaison. So didn't Eric report out on that?
Yes. Yeah. Right before he left, it was, the park board or the community center had no interest, and then the park board got behind that.
A published report somewhere?
I think Eric had it. I thought so, but we'll look for it.
Have to go back and take a look.
Okay,
Katie.
well, it's a short-term goal.
Yeah, we'll find that. We'll find it, and believe me, I'd love to
it would have been good.
Resurrect that. I think it's it is, and like I said, I've talked to both entities, and I think it's a perfect spot to do something different and new. No, I'm with.
Well, that
Katie.
collaboration was something that the village paid money for, and I don't know that I didn't see any report on it. So maybe residents would like the results.
Yeah, we'll find it. Yeah, because we paid money for consultants to help us draft drawings. We have all of that, and we'll put it back on the website. Absolutely. I think it was there a year ago. It was drawings. There were a different. Remember it? Vaguely, but okay. You remember it. All right.
I think also adding here the idea of traffic challenges on Harlem and potential, I don't know, or with residents that in those areas.
I think I was talking to a group of people just the other day, longtime residents, and they said that the number one issue that they had was the amount of traffic that comes through our neighborhood now. Just the amount and the speed at which they come.
The speed, yeah.
So thank you, Erica, for mentioning that, and it's true. It's kind of on everyone's mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think we've sort of started down this path, but the idea we've talked about at the board table that there we don't have any cul-de-sacs or anything meaningful along, let's say, Des Moines Street, right next to North Avenue. And honestly, like when I look at any other village in this area or in other parts of Chicago, um, there are those towns do something about that you can't just go, at 40 miles an
So
hour.
Erica, in our comprehensive plan, there's actually designs for
Right.
cul-de-sacs. You're right, we've never implemented it because it is could be a third rail. I mean, where residents don't want them to be blocked off, yet they want the traffic to be
Yeah.
like slowed down. I think what you're saying, we do have a great deal of traffic, and it's a great deal at speed, and I think it's a collaboration with our police department on how to calm the traffic down, whether it's speeding, cul-de-sacs, speed bumps, signs. It is an issue. I mean, and I think the residents, it would be on the top 5.
So I agree with you on the third rail. I mean, there's been quite a few people who have commented about the bump outs on Chicago Avenue and Lake Street. So what's happened is, people are slowed down on Lake Street and Chicago Avenue, but now they're going down, Augusta or Division at breakneck speed. So I think it's kind of just putting the resources in the right place to start sending the message out that you can't speed through our town.
People talked about speed cameras at one event that I was at. I'm like, well, we can't do it because we're not home rule, and and it's we don't, and I think it's limited to just populations of 1 million people. That's why you only see Chicago having speed cameras. Although I laugh because you put speed cameras up and people get tickets, they get mad. So that's the third rail. You want to calm it down, but when you start putting infrastructure in, whether it's technology or whatever, bump outs, other conversation. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's what we get elected to do. Both the accolades. So I think, as long as long term is, I think Lisa, you're right. It's a long term kind of, vision is, we want a calm, quaint town. I don't know if, given the amount of traffic now that comes through our neighborhood, how do we continue that?
I agree with you, and I do think also we've had residents express to us that they don't want to, they need to see measures in the immediate future. Waiting for it, the TIF development, that's too far. Here are the different spots that we can, both hands. Again, when we're talking about short term, we're talking about initiating something within the next
Lisa, just to be clear, you're gonna take any of our vision stuff that is like short-term and put it in the right bucket, right? Thank you. Just didn't want to waste time.
All right. Oh. Oh, my God, you have a whole week. That was one of the short-term goals. You're gonna come back in 1 week. No, I'm too.
All right, this is a good start.
Yeah.
Bob can't hear you, so can you, yeah.
Sorry, Bob, I was guilty of the thing we holler at other people about. So what I was saying was, as I look around the room and look at some of the visioning items, what I see are some issues that bring up our underlying zoning regulations. Affordable housing has a lot to do with density. ADUs is a zoning regulation. Single-family residence over to a duplex, that's zoning. A lot of what is happening in your commercial corridors has to do with zoning. As you know, every development in your commercial corridors that includes multifamily is a planned development, and all planned developments are evaluated relative to your bulk standards. So I would add on here that we start looking at, within the next 2 years, our zoning regulations.
Real good. I think this is a great start, and a lot of good stuff. So hopefully what we can do is we'll condense it like we normally do.
Okay.
And keep everything so everybody knows.
Okay.
And if we've missed something, we'll always go back to it.
Are we gonna do any long-term goals, or I heard Lisa mention that,
Yeah.
or we're not
So-
today or some other time?
The last issue is, if you think that there are, so I guess maybe as a wrap up,
Okay.
if there are any long-term goals that you think we haven't covered yet, let's get those on the board.
Okay.
Before we
Okay.
conclude.
I have one that it's kind of a grouping, and it's all about electrification, so we can tap into green energy. And we talked about residential electrification. We can talk about bus electrification at the schools, through PACE, through whatever. So I think a long-term goal is just to develop an electrification plan across residential, business, and municipalities, from a building perspective, from a transportation perspective. And yeah, like that would, like EV chargers, you can put a lot into that.
Yep, that's great.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. The infrastructure has
Yeah.
to do it willy-nilly.
Not enough, we could throw,
Right.
infrastructure, this would be great.
I had,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry,
No,
Russ.
go ahead.
Lisa and I must be on the same wavelength, because there were 3 things that she mentioned in visioning that I had in long-term. So I'll just mention them to underline or emphasize. One is the greater partnering with our 2 universities, which are huge assets and have wonderful offerings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talking about a trust in the states class, that's something that, you know, the university could help us with, something like that. Number 2 is more incentives to preserve our historic architecture and river forests. I think we all acknowledge that the varied historic nature of our architecture is one of the huge appeals of River Forest. It's what causes a lot of people to move here. And we've seen that it's cheaper to tear down and rebuild new homes. So what kind of incentives can we provide to make it easier decision for homeowners to preserve architecture? Lisa had mentioned that. Third is study, analyze the permeable versus impermeable surfaces on our land. It's similar to the one you said, Lisa, but it's a little bit different in that it is stormwater management. If we continue to allow businesses and homeowners to continually encroach on the permeable surfaces, we're going to continue to cause these flooding problems. So one way to resolve that, in addition to looking carefully at the percentage footprint allowed, permeable versus permeable, is to give incentives for permeable surfaces. And I'll add one final one that came to me now. I was sitting here tonight. Is some people were mentioning streetlights, and you guys were
going to talk about that.
Yeah, but what you guys had was mentioned was the timing of the crosswalks. I remember when I was running for trustee, and again, I hear from seniors over and over again, street lights are so dim.
I was going to talk about that too.
Seniors, and not just seniors and not seniors, have difficulty driving in our streets.
Right.
And because I know we went, maybe 5 years ago, we did the
LED.
We changed out all of our lighting, and we did a great job with that. It's all LED. But I don't know if this is a short or long-term thing. Can we look at whether we can increase the amount of light without encroaching on
the
residents? Can we, so there's research that's done, I'm sure, about the housing going down enough so it's not going into your homes, but it's really focusing the light on the streets so that people can drive more safely.
And there is. Right. And there is. There are some municipalities that already do it. So they shine the light so it really is focused away from the homes because residents are going to complain. They don't want the light hitting them. So it's hitting the sidewalk and it's hitting the street. And I don't know exactly in terms of how they reflect the light down. It's almost like a little bit, as I understand, like the senior housing, senior assistant on, the Sheridan, thank you. The Sheridan that's away from the residents, it actually focuses and hits the light down and it pretty, and there are lights like that too, that they do it. And then some of the municipalities, they have a light that reflects straight to the sidewalk and then the other, almost like a two-prong. And the city of Chicago sometimes has it. But they will focus one light on the street and the other light on the sidewalk, and it's not residents. So that I had it under my long term because I thought maybe that's about the village for that. So yeah, I still have two others ideas.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. All right. So in addition to those street lights, long term, the other long term goal I had was looking at the sidewalks because that's another issue I've heard from seniors and maybe not so senior about the leveling of the sidewalks. Some need repair. Others are just need leveling, and I know there's firms, and I've talked to some other municipalities, if the leveling isn't as high or differential, they will actually shave. There's companies that actually shave one, sidewalk slab to the other, so it actually is sort of smooth. I know Oak Park has done it. And some, obviously, I've seen where some of the sidewalks are torn with cracks in them.
Jeff, do you want to talk about some of the work that we do and kind of the cyclical work that we do here?
Okay.
We have an annual curb and sidewalk replacement program. Part of that work is to perform an annual survey of the town. We don't do the whole town every year, but every year we do the high volume areas around town center, around the schools, areas like that see a lot of foot traffic, and then the rest of the village is split up into thirds. So we hit every area every 3 years at least. As part of that work, we either, if we find trip hazards where there is a differential in the two squares, we replace them right now. Years ago, my understanding was that the village used to have a program where they could grind, or there's another, it's called mud jacking, where they kind of inject some stuff underneath the low one to raise it up. So there's a few different ways that that issue can be approached. It was my understanding that we had kind of gotten away from the sidewalk grinding approach.
Yeah.
Certainly something we can delve back into if that's something you all are interested in, especially if there are some savings involved in that.
Jeff, I am not going to tell you what to do. All I know is the seniors are telling me they want to be able to walk without tripping. And I've seen other non-seniors do that, and I've seen people in disabilities who also want to push their wheel. I mean, they're rolling on the wheelchair and don't want to get caught up on a sidewalk. That's a
Sure.
So it's sort of a mixture of everything. I'm just throwing out ideas that I was told that other municipalities are doing. We don't have to do it. It's just, yeah. And okay, good.
I think we can tackle that more short term.
Okay, the last thing, talk about our seniors. And some of the other municipalities do it, and I think we've heard it before with putting maybe benches more than just in the parks, because as our seniors are walking around, our people who, in general,
That could be an art project.
yeah, try to put some benches around, and I know sometimes they put them on a corner where people can rest before they cross the street or something along those lines.
I don't think that's a long-term goal.
yeah.
I think that's a short-term goal.
Okay, well, that's even better.
Benches,
Yeah.
artwork, I
Yeah,
mean,
and I'm not
you
saying
can
every
just
corner,
asterisk it.
but yeah, something.
As you were
Okay, I'm
talking-
done.
Okay, thank you, Red.
As you were talking about sidewalks, one of the things I feel I come across with the streets like Harlem Avenue is if you're driving on the right-hand side of the street, there's usually holes and things, and I recognize that this is a long-term because it's dealing with IDOT, I'm sure other places, but something that we can do to continue make it so that like when we're doing road repair on Harlem Avenue, it can just last for
Fair enough. So just so you know, IDOT is planning to resurface Harlem. I believe it was next year, and we've already communicated the need to them to do basically more substantial patching in some of those areas. The east side of Harlem Avenue is the same shape. I don't know if it's the buses or what, but along that curb line, it is in bad shape between, I'd say, like Oak or Chicago all the way up to about Lemoyne. It's definitely in rough shape, and that's something we continue.
Lisa.
I just have one more. Yep. Sorry. Actually, walking over Thanksgiving weekend, I saw it. It was kind of appalling. And I think this is short term, is working with the park district to figure out how to figure out the trash situation. And if you go across from Jewel Park with with bocce, it was horrific.
I don't think that's a table. That's not a table.
I know, but unfortunately we have an issue.
Table stakes.
And I don't know if maybe you have adopt a park and have clubs go in there and clean them up.
I agree.
There's something that we have to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, those are just some.
My recollection is that the park district decided not to put trash cans by the bocce courts because they wanted to encourage people to bring in and take away their trash, but it's caused a problem.
No, but this is actually not bocce trash. This is just trash.
So flying around?
Yes.
And they're just not picking it up frequently. So that's, those are issues. That's a table. So the only one other thing I want to add, and then we can wrap it up, is I know Bob talked about the schools, and the one thing that I think we ought to work with the schools on, D90, T200, and maybe the universities, is early childhood development.
Oh, good point.
And I think if we collaborate with our school districts, our park districts, again, this is another taxing body collaboration, this is so key to equity in my mind.
Yeah.
Is working with all of the children early on. So, okay, does anybody else got anything?
I just had one more, and then I promise you I'm
No
done. I
worries,
promise.
that's all right.
No, it's good,
Go.
I just was going to say that, you know, it's somewhat short term, but long term is that we always keep our eye on the major, I'm going to call them deficiencies in river forests. One is our wildlife population, and then secondly, our flooding issues. We always have our eye on the ball, and that as we try to fix infrastructures, as we create new parks and developments, we always keep our eye on those major issues that affect river forests and have affected river forests for years, and will probably affect river forests for years to come.
Okay, very good. So I appreciate it. You know, I think what we heard here is, hey, stay the same but change. So,
A little
no, this is, and that's
Good.
great. I mean, all of that I think is, this is wonderful, and I very much appreciate everybody's engagement, tonight. All right, if there's no further, questions or comments or, advice for whatever, we'll go ahead and, close the meeting down.
Move to adjourn? Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Yes.
Phyllis,
Yes.
Bachner? O'Connell?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Hey.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's right.
You did not
Yeah, Brennan.
Yes.
See, Katie, they forget about us.
You vote no. Did you vote no? No, she said yeah. Oh, okay. No, we're gonna stay here. I thought you voted no on adjournment. I was like, wow, Katie, bold move.
I think
So-
she said, whoa, like.
Yeah, no, hey, that's what she said. I got it. My bad. Okay, thank you everyone for all your, dedication. I really, really, really appreciate it. So thank you.